1969, there's a party going on at a modest cottage in Martha's Vineyard, the playground of the American political elite. U.S. Senator Ted Kennedy, member of the famous Kennedy political dynasty, is in attendance. Around 11:15 p.m., he leaves with a young woman. He is drunk and can't make his way back to the ferry to take him back to the mainland. He takes a wrong turn and, in the dark, can't see the bridge coming up in front of him. The result was a tragic accident that broke the national news cycle. The girl that was with him, Mary Jo, died. Her body retrieved by a scuba diver the next day. This was the second time Ted had cheated death.
At midnight last Friday, Senator Edward M. Kennedy drove a car off a narrow bridge and into a pond on Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts. A young woman in the car with him was drowned. Kennedy survived but failed to report the accident until 10 hours later. Today, police moved to prosecute the senator on a charge of leaving the scene of an accident after causing bodily harm.
In 1964, he was in a plane crash which he miraculously survived. For the second time in less than a decade, Ted Kennedy had escaped the family curse, the curse that had already killed several of his family members and would bring many more to their doom.
In Dallas, Texas, 3 shots were fired at President Kennedy's motorcade in downtown Dallas. This picture has just been transmitted by wire. It is a picture taken just a moment or two before the incident. If you can zoom in with that camera, we can get a closer look at this picture. From Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time.
Joseph Kennedy Sr. was an ambitious and driven Irish-American Catholic, determined for dynastic greatness. He had already made a huge fortune through legal and not-so-legal means and had been U.S. ambassador to the United Kingdom during World War II.
A new ambassador to Britain, Mr. Joseph Kennedy. GB News interviewed him on his arrival at the American Embassy.
Just arrived in England after a very pleasant trip. I'm looking forward with great anticipation to my duties here and to renewing acquaintanceship with many old friends.
But it wasn't just himself that he was ambitious for. No, his ambitions extended to his children, specifically his eldest son, Joseph Kennedy Jr. He wanted his son to make it to the highest office in the land. He wanted him to be president. But there was one problem. See, Kennedy had another son, this one known to the family as Jack, but known to history as John F. Kennedy. Jack had joined the Navy in World War II and was deployed to the Pacific Theater. During this time, his small boat was smacked in the middle of the night by a Japanese destroyer and split in two. He took hold of his wounded comrades and swam for miles to the nearest island, far behind Japanese lines. Presumed dead by his family, the only way Jack could get help was by etching a message into a coconut and throwing it into the sea. The coconut reached an American station, and he and his comrades were rescued. Jack became somewhat of a sensation and a war hero back home. And his older brother Joseph was jealous. If he ever wanted to fulfill his father's ambitions of becoming America's first Catholic president, he would have to win back the spotlight. So he signed up to become a pilot and, all in all, took part in 25 highly dangerous missions. He'd met all the requirements of service and was able to go home whenever he wanted. But he volunteered for one last mission, flying bombers over German waters to destroy Nazi submarines. During a family reunion of all the Kennedy family, they got the news. Joseph Jr. had died in combat. The curse had struck once more. It was now time for the next in line to the Kennedy throne to finish what his brother had started. But Joe Jr. was far from the first Kennedy to be claimed by this family curse.
My Uncle Joe was supposed to parachute out just before it crossed the English Channel. And there was a tracking plane that would follow it, and it was supposed to fly into the submarine nests on the coast of the Netherlands, and it was a fully loaded bomb, and the follow plane turned on the remote control And the minute they did that, the plane exploded and
Oh,
vaporized.
fuck.
My uncle's body was never found. But 20 years later, my grandfather, if you mentioned his name, Joe's name, he was the oldest brother, and he was kind of the golden child. My grandfather would break into tears, and he never got over it. And then his eldest daughter died 2 years later in another air crash.
Only a few years earlier, Kathleen, also known as Kick, was killed in a plane crash with her future husband, an English nobleman. Kathleen had married him even though he was a divorcee and worse, a Protestant, which led her mother, who was a hardcore Roman Catholic, to see her as an adulteress and a traitor to her faith. She disowned her daughter completely, but her father was more liberal and flew out to meet the love of his daughter's life. Just before he arrived, however, the English nobleman, whose name was William Cavendish, Marquess of Hartington, wanted to fly on a short holiday before meeting his father-in-law and took his wife with him. The pilot warned them that the weather was bad, but her fiancé insisted they go. November 22nd, 1963. John F. Kennedy has been president for almost 3 years. He has led the country through the Cuban Missile Crisis, the height of the Cold War, and the Civil Rights Movement. He has saved the world from nuclear destruction by the hands of the Soviet Union and its colonial vassal state of Cuba, staved off communism, and expanded the rights of African Americans after centuries of oppression.
There are many people in the world who really don't understand, or say they don't, what is the great issue between the free world and the communist world. Let them come to Berlin. Freedom has many difficulties, and democracy is not perfect. But we have never had to put a wall up to keep our people in, to prevent them from leaving us. I know of no town, no city that has been besieged for 18 years that still lives with the vitality and the force and the hope and the determination of the city of West Berlin. Today, in the world of freedom, the proudest boast is, Ich bin ein Berliner.
The people of America love him, but his unwillingness to liberate Cuba from the Soviet imperialist oppression has earned him many enemies within the US military and the elite who see him as soft on communism. One day, while he was visiting Texas, his motorcade rode through Dallas and passed a book depository. President Kennedy was shot in the head, supposedly from behind, but interestingly, his head was yanked backward from the impact of the gunshot, indicating he was shot from the front. Early reports said that the shots came from the grassy knoll, but those reports were suspiciously retracted and all the blame was heaped on a man called Lee Harvey Oswald. Not long after that, Oswald was shot by an assailant called Jack Ruby, who himself, in turn, went insane, falling into mental madness. Many so-called conspiracy theories arise. Blame is placed on the mafia, the CIA and FBI, the military, communists, fervent anti-communists within the state apparatus, and many more. But many others are willing to believe the government narrative, which claims one guy shot the president all by himself with no apparent motive. To this day, the mystery is unsolved, but one thing is clear: the nation mourned. June 5th, 1968. The Democratic primary for the 1968 presidential election is being held in California. As the results trickled in, it became obvious who the winner would be: Robert Bobby Kennedy Sr., the younger brother of fallen President John F. Kennedy. Bobby Kennedy was extremely popular amongst the population, and his policies of helping the poor and ethnic minorities of America made him a political superstar. On top of that, there was a nostalgia for the Kennedy years. During his older brother's administration, he had served as Attorney General and had dealt hard blows to organized crime, leading to a rise in his personal fame. He gave his victory speech, thanking his supporters and campaign team in the hotel where his team had watched the results come in.
My thanks to all of you, and now it's on to Chicago, and let's win there.
After the speech, he was led through the hotel's kitchens to speak with the press in a hall where they had gathered. In the last second, one of his agents changed his path to another part of the hotel with the words, "No, it's been changed," leading the would-be president down a different route. Robert Kennedy was shot by a man named Sirhan Sirhan, putting an end to any hopes of a Kennedy returning to the White House for a generation. Sirhan, a Palestinian extremist, said his deed had been motivated by Kennedy's support for the young nation of Israel. But once again, conspiracies began to arise, and people questioned the government's narrative. Was Bobby Kennedy, the hope of change of a hopeful and changing nation, really gunned down by a lone Palestinian terrorist? Or was there something larger at play? JFK Jr. was a breathtakingly handsome man, with his father's elegance and his mother's beauty. His father was killed when he was just a toddler, and he was raised by his stepfather, a rich shipping tycoon on a private island off the coast of Greece. As a young adult, he developed a passion for flying, but was discouraged from pursuing this hobby by many people in his family, especially his mother Jackie. He heeded their warnings until his mother died in 1994, when he started flying again. He eventually married a beautiful woman called Carolyn Bessette. His life was perfect, and many speculated that he might run for president. On July 16, 1999, he planned on flying from New Jersey to Hyannisport, Massachusetts. After doing some weird and suspicious maneuvers going up and down and left and right, almost as if he wasn't in control of the plane dove nose first into the ocean. When the speedometer was recovered, it showed that JFK Jr. had been flying at the highest speed it could record. The family curse had claimed another Kennedy life, again under strange and curious circumstances.
Southern New Englanders have always had a close-up view of the family the world has seen from a distance. Massachusetts and Rhode Island are home to the Kennedys. Perhaps that is the reason many locals are feeling a personal sense of loss.
Bobby Kennedy Jr. is the only presidential candidate since his father to not get Secret Service protection, with Biden-appointed Secretary of Homeland Security Mayorkas explicitly stating that he is determined that Secret Service protection for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is not warranted. Why is this? Bobby Kennedy Jr. is the most anti-establishmentarian candidate in the current 2024 presidential race, and has the best chance of weakening Kamala Harris by splitting the Democratic vote.
We declare independence from Wall Street, from big tech, from big pharma, from big ag, from the military contractors and their lobbyists.
His anti-corporate and environmental track record, as well as his populist policies regarding the border crisis, put him at odds with much of his own party, most of which has gone mentally insane the last few years. He and his supporters are the only free-thinking elements of the entire Democrat Party, who are not flesh and bone extensions of America's corporate media complex. If anyone is going to restore the party of his father and uncles to sanity and its traditional liberal values, it'll be him. So after so many of his relatives have died under highly suspicious circumstances, not to mention the recent and extremely suspicious assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life, would it not be wise to afford him Secret Service protection? Or are the elite planning something? Will Bobby Kennedy Jr. be the next victim of the Kennedy curse? If you like this video, like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to support the channel, our donation links are in the description box below. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.